This podcast is for the week of December 4th. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. It's been said many times that here in the Midwest, a major variable in determining whether a storm system will have the potential to bring significant precipitation or not is the question of will it tap into Gulf moisture? Will Gulf of Mexico, moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, will there be a flow coming from the Gulf of Mexico into the low pressure system? And if the answer is yes, the storm has potential. And if the answer is no, the potential is quite limited. The following is an example of a rapidly changing weather forecast involving Gulf moisture. We have seen here in the Chicago area storm systems which were not expected to tap into Gulf moisture for several days in advance of the storm, but within a day before the storm, it became clear that there would be Gulf moisture, and the forecast drastically changes at that point. An example of that is the Super Bowl blizzard back in 2015. We will now discuss if there is a trend amongst computer models. Can you expect the trend to continue, or is it a 50-50? Another thing to keep in mind is that once that happens, a lot of times, once there's a trend, the trend will keep going up. So there might actually be more Gulf moisture than what appeared even initially. That snow system initially appeared to be just flurries, a quick-moving low-pressure system, although it was vigorous, but it was quick-moving, a moisture-starved low-pressure system coming out of Canada, ended up producing 18 inches of snow here in Chicago as it collided with Gulf moisture. We will now discuss whether it's possible to get ample moisture without tapping into the Gulf of Mexico for the Midwest and the southern plains. This week, we have an interesting situation. Regardless as to whether there's Gulf moisture or not, in the initial phases of a low-pressure system, or more accurately, just a frontal boundary, that's the front it's like a summer or a springtime weather pattern. There's not even a strong low-pressure system associated with what's going to be going on in the south, at least initially. The high-pressure area over the Gulf of Mexico is situated in such a way that it's allowing ample moisture from the Pacific Ocean to flow right into Oklahoma. Additionally, it appears that Gulf moisture at some point will feed into the storm system. We will now discuss why this week the forecast is more difficult than usual from Wednesday or Thursday onward. It's difficult to forecast what's going to be going on over the next few days because there's a complete weather pattern change that's expected to take place sometime between Wednesday and Thursday. Right now we have a high pressure area. It's called a blocking high. It's over Greenland. This high pressure system is expected to break down, says the Minneapolis, Minnesota National Weather Service, on Thursday. But until it does so, it is difficult to forecast what exactly is going to be happening with the low pressure that develops in the southern plains on Wednesday, or more like the southern high plains, but then tracks into the central plains. That thing is coming from the Pacific Ocean. To know what exactly it's going to do is difficult. But one thing seems pretty clear. There is a front, basically a stationary front, that's going to situate itself on the Gulf Coast states, occasionally moving north, as far north as perhaps even Missouri. In fact, even Cleveland will get into the warm action later in the week. That low pressure system is going to intensify and drag the front north as a warm front. But that front, just like in the springtime, there's a front a lot of times, like during the flood of 1993, just a front, and there's continuous rain along the front. One big difference, however, is that the precipitation that falls from the front, as of now, is expected to be light. It's not until the real low pressure system comes in that the precipitation becomes heavy, but we're talking about real heavy rain with thunderstorms for many of these states in the south central states like Arkansas, perhaps eastern Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, perhaps the southern portions of St. Louis. A beneficial rain is expected for the St. Louis area as of now. The heavy rain could move north into the St. Louis area, but the Ozarks seem to be part of this, and even extreme southern Illinois could be getting a couple inches of rain from the setup this week. We have a series of low pressure systems which will be riding the front in the southern parts of the Midwest, or more accurately, probably the southern plains and the south central states, into the Ohio Valley, including Cleveland. And there's also a series of low pressure systems that will be riding in the northern stream up in Minnesota. 3 low pressure systems, 2 of them affecting the same area up in Minnesota over the next 3 days, central and northern Minnesota, but each one has very little moisture. The following measurements of a half of an inch to an inch is referring to snowfall, not the water equivalent. About a half of an inch to an inch for each one, so you might end up with a total of 2 inches for parts of northern Minnesota, a total of about an inch perhaps for southern Minnesota. We will now discuss the significant snow that might or might not take place on the backside of the storm system. Things become interesting again for the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday part of the week, because this time of the year, there usually is an area of heavy snow that develops on the backside of these strong storm systems. It's not clear how strong the low pressure system is going to be. The cold air behind this storm system doesn't seem to be that cold, and therefore the amount of snow is really in question right now. To go ahead and just say there'll be a 6 to 12 inch storm like there usually is would be premature, because it doesn't even seem like that is what's going to be happening. There might only be a few inches out of the midweek low pressure area. The main moisture is going to be south of the storm, and also there's the cold air. It doesn't seem like there's going to be enough moisture by the time you get to the air where it's cold enough for it to fall as snow. There's another low pressure system to track that's going to be coming up on Sunday, but unseasonably warm conditions are expected to develop across the southeast states in response to the low pressure system. In fact, unseasonably warm conditions, even without that low pressure system, originally potential record warmth, could have developed, but we have a lot of fog. So there actually, for many areas, it's an active pattern this week. We will now discuss whether Chicago will get snow perhaps this week, and what about areas to the east. For those of us that like the winter weather, there is some potential for Chicago. There's some potential for Thursday night and Friday, which will be the second half of the storm system. There's potential for perhaps some accumulating snow. And then we have another storm system again that develops for the latter part of the weekend. That's been on the radar screen already for the past several days. This low pressure system midweek is something relatively new, producing about 2 to 4 inches of rain across the south central states and even portions of the southeast. There's a lot of questions with the storm track on that one. Will it be going north of Lake Erie? Will it be going in the northern portions of Lake Erie? There even are some forecasters that are suggesting it might go into the mid-Atlantic area and collide with cold air, but that is an unlikely scenario. You have been listening to the podcast Weather with Enthusiasm. Several additional feet of snow is expected by Monday morning. We have a powerhouse typhoon which has developed off in the Pacific Ocean. A big shockaroo to many of you. This is especially true in regards to what's going to be going on in Alaska. We have parts of the world that are so hot right now. Temperatures are expected to go into the low 130s. Hey, we have a special guest on our show. What is your name?
Kitabis.
A heat wave that's going to be headed to the Eilat area. We're going to have to wait before we get into the next excitement. We're going from one extreme to the next extreme. 27.1 barometric pressure. Feet of snow are falling in Japan.
Oh my gosh.
Weather. That's a time of celebration. Just Google weather with enthusiasm and they're all going to come up.